Good evening. Welcome to a regularly scheduled meeting of the Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. We'll hear the applications in the order that they appear on the agenda, which was posted. We generally will deliberate after we close the hearings. The public is not allowed to comment during the deliberations. It's just for the board members. If you choose to stay, you can stay and watch the deliberations. If you don't want to stay, you can call Woody tomorrow and find out what happened. With that, we'll go ahead and start with calendar number 18, 2021, the application of Matthew Troy. If you're here on that application, please, are we going from the podium tonight?
Yeah, I think mostly.
Please step up to the podium. Thank you. This is being filmed.
So the 20 pounds of COVID added, I got another 10 from the camera. That's fantastic. Keep it relatively simple. Just
Could you introduce yourself for
I'm
the
sorry.
record, please, and spell your name?
Matt Troy, M-A-T-T-T-R-O-Y.
Thank you.
What we're trying to do here, fairly straightforward, is we have an existing stoop that measures 4 by 6, and we want to add a foot to both sides and the front, and then put a raised portico above it to shelter it from the weather. Really, this is a safety issue. I had my father fall and my mother fell. There's just not adequate coverage with the 4-foot stoop. It's a weird angle, and the second step is always you're halfway off, and so it's really just born out of a safety concern. The second piece was just, we've gone through 3 front doors now with no coverage. The portico will shelter from the sun and rain, so we won't be warped and have to get a 4th door, hopefully. But again, fairly straightforward, just a foot on either side of the stoop. 10 out of the 20 houses on the block already have one of this size or similar size and encroachment to the road. The neighbors were very supportive. They all said it'll look great. At least I talked to directly the 3 that would be facing it.
And you don't have any plans to enclose it?
No, it's going to be just two
Just 2
columns
Okay.
and an apex,
Okay.
completely open throughout. So again, I think the primary issue is just the foot, and our contractor had suggested 6 by 10, which was too big, but I believe in the past you guys have done 8 by 5, which is what brought it down to a minimum size.
Okay. Perfect. Barb, any questions?
Nope.
Dan?
Just confirm for the record, if in fact this is accurate, that one of the safety issues you're concerned about is ice and snow above on the roof potentially falling down onto people coming in and out of the property?
Yes, that is, well, I'd say secondary. Primary, it's accumulation of materials on the stoop itself. And even when it wasn't icy, we had 2 children actually fall off. It's just an awkward line. So there's a myriad of issues, but primarily snow and ice coming in, as well as the accumulation here. It drifts and ices up very regularly, no matter how much I shovel it.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Yep.
Woody?
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the application. Thank you very much for
Thank
your time.
Supposed to leave this here, right?
Yeah, Woody
Yeah,
wanted to
somewhere
leave
in
it.
there. If you'd like it back, let me know.
What do you think, Roy?
Oh, good luck.
Can I leave? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. You guys have a good
You
night.
could stay, you could leave,
Rangers game is on.
bring back vodka.
Rangers.
Next is calendar number 5, 2022, the application of Wilder Gleason Associates on behalf of William Hosberg and Abigail Hosberg, and I apologize if I did not pronounce that correctly. 6 Pratt Lane. If you're here on that application, please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is not Wilder Gleason. It's Jake Watkins with Roger Ferris and Partners.
Could you spell your last name for me, please?
W-A-T-K-I-N-S.
Thank you.
Wilder is supposed to be here on behalf of clients Will and Abby Hosberg. I don't see your hand, so I'll start the presentation. Just 1 second, please.
Sure.
So we're here to talk about 6 Pratt Island. This This aerial depicts where the property is, depicts the neighboring properties, depicts the proximity to the water. It's an unusual property because of the proximity of the house to the water. This application has been reviewed by all the neighbors. There have been letters of support and no objections from the neighboring properties.
Woody, is that the town's? The monitor?
Yes, the equipment there, screens and such.
When did we get that?
Well, the last year, they were in here last month.
Pretty
but
cool.
not
How much
utilized.
does that cost?
Yeah. It's cool.
This is the existing residence as it stands today. House was originally built in 1920. The first floor elevation is located at elevation 12. It's in AE 13 zone, which means that the first floor elevation is below that zone. Go to the next slide too. This kind of shows the areas that we are affecting with the new design. We're looking at proposing a new garage addition to the front, approximately 300 or 270 square feet, and relocating the front entry design as well. We're also looking at removing some dormers on the roof area as well to clean up the overall look and feel of the residence. This is the assessor's card that shows both the year it was built in 1920 and the currently appraised building value. And go on the next slide that shows just the general area that's represented in the house, and where we are going to be adding on to is on top of A4 and in place of A5 right here. As you can see from this diagram right here, it just basically depicts that it's a very, very unusual lot shape. The area in the middle where, when you take into account all the setbacks on all sides are 40 feet. There are no front yards, there are no side yards. Everything is depicted as a rear yard in this case because there's no street running through this site. This is a private drive. And because of that, all of the properties in this region on the Pratt Island have 40-foot setbacks. That leaves a residual bow tie shape that is only 18 feet wide in the center right there, which means that most of the house is outside of those setbacks. That all of the house, the front entry, most of the garage, the living area is all water side of that setback right there. There's a small area, kitchen area. Hey, Wilder, how you doing?
Sorry, I thought it was 7:30.
Here we go.
Apologies.
It's okay.
He's doing a great job.
Yeah,
So.
you
I'm sure it is.
filled in for you.
The two green areas that you see are the only areas of the house that are currently within the regulated setbacks. And if you go to the next slide here, and Wilder, please chime in if you feel like I'm missing anything. What you see here in green and red are the areas that we are affecting with our additions. The green is the approximately 200 square foot addition to the garage. This area right here, the reasons why it is depicted in red is because it's still outside of the setbacks, but is the addition for the front entry. It is still obviously landward of the water side. We're also looking at proposing moving and raising the AC condensers that are currently on the rear of the house right here. On the next slide. This just shows the work to the roof that we're trying to effect. There are 4 dormers on the house. 3 of them are non-conforming. 1 of them is currently conforming. The one that is conforming is this green one. These are the red setback lines that we were looking at previously in the bow tie shape. So by removing these dormers, we're actually bringing the house into further compliance because we're removing that volume from the non-conforming. Next slide.
And can you tell me why you're doing that?
Architecturally, it's from a
Okay.
design point of view. We want to clean up the look of the house, dated, asphalt
Do
shingles.
you know roughly or precisely how much square footage is being removed from nonconformance because of removing those 3 dormers?
Yeah, it's about, this is 180, 260 cubic feet overall.
Cubic feet, okay.
Yep.
We have a slide that shows that.
Oh,
Okay.
Sorry. Wilder Gleason.
You gotta speak.
You have to go
at
to the
I-
podium
this
while,
doesn't
you
get up.
know,
Okay.
you know the routine.
You've been here before, Wilder.
It's been a while.
Slide 30, the next slide, this shows the, just the engineering for the new addition, shows this in conformance because it's in the A zone.
If I can just supplement it. It indicates that the platform for the mechanical equipment will be designed to resist flooding forces fully in compliance with FEMA. That's part of what you have. And every one of the additions will be designed to meet FEMA for the AE zone. We can't manage the VE zone because we're at 12 feet on the first floor of the house, and you got to be at 17 to meet FEMA.
And there's no plan to raise the house?
There's no plan to raise
No,
that.
and in fact, that's why we're doing not a substantial improvement. All this is going to cost less than 50% of the appraised value of the house, so that we don't have to lift it.
And Woody, if we were to approve this project, this would end up in front of the EPC as well?
Planning and zoning.
Planning and
Commission.
zoning.
Not EPC, but
For, who does?
coastal site
Coastal.
plan, that's planning and
Okay,
zoning commission.
okay.
Flood damage prevention too.
Okay.
So is there any part of the addition that is not going to be flood compliant? The garage, you said, is coming out.
We're adding on to the garage, and that is flood compliant because it's just the garage, and that is compliant because it's at the elevation it needs to be. There is the portion of the front entry, if you go back to the 2 slides. There's a small portion right here, it's about 33 square feet. It's a small vestibule, and I can show that more clearly in the architectural drawings. That will be at the elevation of the current residence at elevation 12, which is approximately 2 feet below.
So you're asking for a variance of the setbacks and of the FEMA regulation?
We don't need the variance of the FEMA.
Okay.
It's not a substantial improvement because the overall cost is less than 50%.
Gotcha, okay.
And it's not new construction because new construction applies only to buildings that were constructed after December 1980. That's in the definitions in the regulations. Since this house was built in 1920, we're not new construction despite the addition, which I would think is new construction, but it's not.
Okay.
You go to 2 more slides. 1 more. This is just a building estimate done by Pollock and Partners depicting how much the new construction will cost, showing that it is under 50% of the assessed value of the house. Assessed value of the
Woody,
house.
someone fact checks that, presumably?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not our job to
Well,
fact check that.
I can tell you,
Construction permit.
with the assessor's card, which you saw as one of the slides earlier, has 853,500 as the valuation. And we sent the packet to Woody, but if you want to go back to the second slide, I think it is, the third, if you look here, it's 853. It may be hard to read from there, but that's what it says, 853,500. And it also indicates that the house was built in 1920. That was before zoning regulations were adopted in 1925.
It's in the packet.
So, and that's an attachment to our narrative. And we highlighted those things in the, so, and then if you look at the Pollock and Partners Exhibit G, I believe that is, of your packet, of the narrative, it says the estimate is 399,000. That's obviously less than half of the 853 appraised value. So the package you already have gives you the confirmation you need to make the decision.
Yeah, no, I was just.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, I certainly understand.
I don't know how much, if 25,000 for foundation and footing is accurate. I mean, does someone actually go through this ad nauseum to figure out?
Yeah, as it gets before the planning and zoning commission too, there'll be another look, and the building permit.
Okay.
So,
If Mike Vitti determines that this is going to cost substantially more than $400,000, and it's now looking at, $430,000, we obviously can't proceed.
Right. Right.
And we'll have to take some of it out in order to proceed.
Okay.
Is some of that value, the removal of the dormers?
Yes. Demolition.
Wow.
And the platform for the AC, all that's in there too?
Demolition, yep, and construction, that's right.
Okay.
I can walk you through the construction a little bit more specifically.
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Go on the next slide. This just to your point earlier, the parts that we were taking out, the parts that are not conforming versus the new proposed entry, cubic foot comparison, package as well.
But that doesn't take into account the new building up in the garage area.
The new
That's
garage.
conforming. The garage extension is within the buildable area. So that's as of right.
I take it the garage extension that's coming out is
Yes.
as of right? Is the addition above also as of right?
It is,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, everything above
Okay.
meets high criteria.
Okay.
All of that meets FEMA, it's all within the setbacks,
Okay.
within that bow tie.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I thought some of it was.
Oh, like where the roof connects in?
Yeah, I thought maybe the top part wasn't, but,
Turns
okay,
out
understood.
So this is the first floor plan, moving on to the, showing the addition
Oh,
here.
did you talk about the equipment in the closet?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
This is the front entry addition that we're planning, this is the garage addition that we're planning, and the side addition for the AC compressors. The mechanical room is currently at a much lower elevation than even the elevation of the house. It's at an elevation 7. So 7 feet below where it needs to be for AE compliance. We're planning on raising it up to the elevation of the house, and then the equipment inside will be raised up to FEMA compliance as well. This shows the second floor with just a roofed, flat roof area at above the entry, and a new proposed bedroom above where the garage is going. And this shows the dormers that are being removed and the new roof that's being installed as well.
See, there's, I think that's your point right there. Is that triangle where that gable end connects into the rest of the house is in the setback. Excuse me, it's not in the setback. It's in the setback. It's in the setback.
That's the dormer that's being removed, the triangle there, is the dormer that we're going to.
No, yeah, I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think this is outside of the setback right here.
Yes.
The equipment platform is outside.
No, that,
The roof piece.
Go back.
see
There's
that?
there's a very small portion of that, of the roof right there that's actually currently there. We're just extending this piece out further. There's already a gable right there in place, and it's just being extended out further.
You're coming this way into the conforming area.
That's right. yeah.
From the face forward.
Elevations of the house showing the dormers removed and the new entryway, the new garage on this side. And this is really the key elevation showing the revised platform for the AC compressors. There's a screen wall that goes in front of it as well, screening it from the road and from the general public.
And there's also a hedge that will show up that blocks that view from the neighbors. It's a substantial hedge.
These show the units that are being replaced from the back side again. Coming to this side, there's already a current generator on this side of the house. And so we're marrying that with the other mechanical units.
And again, those AC units currently are in a non-conforming zone, so you're moving them into more compliance.
We're moving them to more compliance. They're both non-compliant from a setback standpoint. They'll still be outside of the setbacks, but we're actually raising them up to FEMA compliance and an AE for
So
the
two
AEs.
pluses, moving them and raising.
That's
Okay.
right.
Moving, raising, and moving further away,
And screening.
and screening.
Okay.
But any additional volume in the setback by means from the AC pad or the equipment?
Well, I think we're creating a slightly larger AC pad because this one is undersized really for servicing. So we want to be able to service all sides. We're also creating, because we're raising up the mechanical platform inside the house, we need access to that. And so we're creating a small stairway on the outside into a new exterior door to access that higher mechanical room on the interior of the house. So that also adds to the exterior area.
We're always looking at volume in the setback, you know, so I'm sure
Right.
there's a slide coming that says, here's what we're losing and here's what we're gaining, and the
Right.
net of it is.
The net of the volume for the, we didn't do a volume calculation about the platform, because the platform's, 6
Compliant.
inches, 1 inch, and we have to make it bigger in order to move the equipment from behind the garage to conform, and we have to get access steps, so we didn't calculate that. But there is actually a slight reduction in volume when you consider the volume of the new front vestibule versus the dormers that we're taking away, the 3 dormers that don't meet, are not compliant with FEMA. That setback.
Yeah.
And Woody, this doesn't fall into any of those AC unit allowances?
No.
Because it's too high, too big?
What do you mean by allowance?
Well, don't we give them
For coverage, there is an allowance, but not for setback.
Oh, there's not, okay.
Yeah, and we're fine on building coverage, it's not an issue.
Okay.
So there's the hedge that you see that's blocking the existing generator, I believe. No, that's against the seawall, right?
There's a hedge that basically runs along the entire road access way, which further screens the new platform from passersby's traffic and pedestrians.
And you can see it in the lower picture. The hedge that goes along the edge of the garage is actually set up so that it's alongside the generator pad that exists now, right here. And that goes back, and there's the generator, actually, you can see a corner of it.
Is that a third bay that we're seeing in that picture? Is that a third bay? for
That's
the
just a
garage?
door.
Just a door, okay, I'm sorry, I can't see it. Okay.
Yeah.
The following slide just gives a detail of what the platform actually is, the elevation that we're bringing it to, the screen wall in front of it, and then the plan view of what we're talking about right here, depicting the new stair coming up to a new exterior door for the interior mechanical room.
So what happens is you come up to elevation 12, and the mechanicals that are in the closet that's in the back of the garage now go from 7-foot elevation up to 15. So you'll have a step here, and then the mechanicals will be up here, 3 feet above. And all these mechanicals will be at elevation 15 in compliance with the flood zone. And since this is a standalone structure, and it's in the AE zone, we are fully compliant. This structure does not touch the house, it's 4 inches away.
Just in terms of us making an assessment about if this is the minimal adjustment necessary, can you just give us a little bit on the record about why it is, and if you do in fact need all those pieces of mechanical equipment that you're showing there in that room, or on that platform?
The generator is an existing piece of equipment, so we're keeping that. The 3 condensers are the same condensers, same size condensers that are currently on the rear of the house. So this area right here is a 3-foot access way. This is a minimal amount of access for the free air that's required and the free air that's required around each compressor. The way they're currently situated on the current platform on the rear of the house, they're placed too close to each other. And the clients have actually been complaining with the air temperature inside their house. And so trying to alleviate that by spreading this out a little bit more.
Okay.
But the good thing is it's moving from 13 feet away to the equipment is now 19 feet away. And the edge of this platform is 25.1 feet away. So we're improving setbacks markedly here. Our clients went to the neighbors and they talked to the McLaughlins, and the McLaughlins own 2 of the abutting properties, and they're the closest properties, and they're most directly affected. And Peter and Lori wrote a letter, which we didn't solicit, and it was a wonderful gift that showed up on Tuesday or Monday, and so that's part of the record. So the people who are most directly affected support this application. They don't just not object, they actively support this. And then they did, the Housebirds did reach out to Jane Schmidt. She's at 3 Pratt Island, which is around the cove on this. If we go back to the aerial, thank you. She's in this house here. And she is going to be thrilled, frankly, to have the mechanical equipment move from her view to the side, although it's already screened somewhat. And there was sort of a tacit approval. And then David Nash is the trustee of the Nash Trust property, and that's oriented towards the bay. The little inlet that's between the yacht club and Pratt Island and Nash Island that comes in, and there's all those houses on Baywater Drive that have waterfront access. He has not responded, and we don't think he would have any concern because he's several hundred feet away and his house is oriented in a different way. So as far as neighbors, we've got the most important ones, and they've written a letter of support.
Great.
So in terms of hardships, we have hardships, and I have for you this is what's up on the screen. Okay? It's an undersized lot. It's 0.75 acres in a 1 acre zone. It's been in this configuration forever. The house was built in 1920, and that was before zoning regulations were adopted. And then the adoption of the regulations, the upgrading of them over time, and it wasn't until 1992 that we had a determination that the street that we thought was a street was not a street, because it didn't meet the definition in the regulations. So people were operating with a front yard and side yard and so on variances, setbacks. So effectively in 1992, a rear yard setback was imposed 40 feet around the entire property, which gives us that really weird shape of a bow tie that is 18 feet deep at its narrowest point and 170 feet wide. So you're never going to get a house on this lot without getting some sort of variance. Since the house already exists where it is, it makes sense that the upgrading of the zoning regulations has created a hardship for what we're doing. The original placement of the house near the water, and then the weird shape and size of the buildable area. It's weirdly shaped, it's weirdly sized, and then we have the upgrading and adoption of flood regulations in 1979. Originally, this was it was a velocity zone, but it wasn't in the 15 zone. And so those create hardships which we think justify the variances. We are making a lot of reduction in nonconformities, which is our next slide. And if you don't like the hardship ground, I propose that reduction in nonconformities is a very solid ground for you, largely because of all the things we're doing to improve mechanical improvements, to make them more compliant with setbacks, to make them more compliant or entirely compliant with FEMA regulations. The exterior if you look at the exterior equipment, it's required to have a 40-foot setback. The existing is 13 feet for the AC units in the back, and it's 39 feet for the generator, which needs to be at 40. We're proposing that it will be, all of the equipment will now be at least 29 feet instead of the 40. That's an improved setback. The elevation goes from 10.3 and 14.1 to 15. That's fully compliant. The mechanical deck, we need a setback. It's existing 13 and 39. We need a 21-foot setback variance for that. That's an improved setback. The deck itself, our current decks are at elevation 10.3 and 14.1. We will be at 15. The interior equipment is supposed to be up at 17 because its portion of the house is in the VE zone, and therefore it has to be 2 feet above. We're now at 7. We propose to lift it to 15. And we ran this by Rick Talamali, who's the town hall flood damage guru, or FEMA guru. And Woody was there, and he said that all makes sense to him. He thinks this is really a good project for us to be doing. And the other thing is the non-conforming volume. We're removing 3 non-conforming dormers, and the volume of that is 8 cubic feet
That's-
more
that's-
than the volume of the vestibule we're proposing. And that's in that slide with the red dormers. We showed that it was 252 versus 260. We're reducing volume in the non-conforming volume by 260 cubic feet, and we're proposing 252 for the vestibule.
And Ron, we'll go back really quickly to interior equipment. Why aren't you going up 17 feet? It just is.
We popped through the floor,
Okay,
and we'd now be taking habitable space on the second floor.
okay.
The equipment is, there's just a limit
This
to
is the
which
most
we-
you can raise it without
It's the
it
most we can- yeah.
causing all kinds of
Yeah,
other,
Yeah,
okay,
and frankly, it's a huge improvement.
yeah, 8
I
feet.
mean, is that 8 feet in the interior of a house without blasting through walls and floors? I mean, the architects have done an amazing job on this, they really have. So,
You guys are done?
we're done.
So, can I, do you mind if I ask a question? Go ahead. Everything makes sense to me, and the presentation was thorough and thoughtful. But there's a little light on what the purpose is and what is happening in that front entrance area. I know you guys said, you're gaining 8 cubic feet, so that should be net positive. But I think we need to understand also what the purpose of that is. Why is not being able to build in that area depriving your client of some substantial justice in the use of his property?
So if we go back to the
It's
front
her property.
elevation for a second. So, right now, the current plan, the current entry point to the house is off-center in the main portion, this main volume of the house. This is primarily an architectural move. It's a planning move. It's a way they want to see their guests, see themselves coming into the house. It's a minor move in the sense that we're trying to add as little square footage as possible and still give them a gracious, thoughtful entry point into their home. All of these things that we're doing from it's a black screen. No, it's not good. All of these things we're doing, which are relating to removing nonconformities, the dormers, and adding nonconformities to the front entry, are actually rooted in the design of the project. And that's the reason why we approached it in the first place.
And what are you doing essentially moving the entryway to a more central location?
We're taking, there's a flat roof portion over the entire area right here. There's a portion, if we go to the first plan for a second. There's a flat roof portion that makes a more kind of gracious entryway. And then there's this small 33 square foot pop out right here that creates a more inviting and gracious entry point when you come into the house.
Wilder, can you tell me why this is a safety issue?
I'm sorry, this,
The necessity for this vestibule,
well, a safety issue.
or some other issue? We don't like to approve things because they're pretty.
Okay, so,
I think that's what you were getting at, Kevin. I didn't mean to hijack your.
there is I think you have some conflict with the way the doors are opening in now. Is that right? And what we're doing is moving the doors out so there's reducing the conflict?
It's a squeezed entry point coming in. You're basically coming into a small and narrow corridor. And by popping it out a little bit, it allows the doors to actually swing in without going into a hallway, without going into the path of travel inside the house.
So like an EMT trying to get access to the house
For their 4 very young children that are running around frantically throughout, that'd be a good reason.
Anything else?
No?
Okay.
I got one.
Okay, Woody?
Can we talk about the porch, the covered porch? So beyond the foyer, you're proposing, how wide and how deep would that porch be?
It's about 7.5 feet deep and 30 feet. It's basically spanning the width right here, that covered area.
That's the new flat roof you're
That's the
putting
new
in.
flat roof,
Under
that's
it, there's a
correct.
porch
Yeah.
going in. Where what exists now? None whatsoever?
Where there currently exists now a small covered entry area.
We have a photograph of that.
Oh, yeah, let's go back to that.
Oh, yeah.
That's what exists right now.
See, it's lined up with the gable, and by removing the gable, it permits the entrance to be centered on the front between the two wings, which is aesthetically far more important but also gives them, they now can do a double entry that works and is safe. And then there'll be a flat roof above it.
So in that picture, the door is going to move to the right to where the window is?
That's right.
And that covering now is going to, call it double in size and come out, and there'll be a porch put under it?
Porch above it.
There's no access way above it. It's basically just a flat roof above what the
Right,
new.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
But it'll span from basically this point right here all the way across to this point.
And below that's enclosed.
it's not just a little small portion of it, 33 square feet is enclosed. But the roof is the width from one side to the other, as it's shown here. And then this is the vestibule.
Gotcha.
And that's 252 cubic feet, roughly.
Correct. The
Yeah,
vestibule is
close.
252 cubic feet, and the 3 dormers are 260.
How many cubic feet is the porch?
0. It's not enclosed.
It's volume though, it's significant change.
Okay, I think I understand the project. Woody, did you have anything further? No.
Oh, I did. One of the drawings had a couple of additional hedges that were proposed around the equipment platform.
Yeah, if
That's still
necessary.
part of the program?
If additional screening is needed in front of an already screened wall, we could potentially add more screening in front of that. We don't think it'll be necessary, but with the wall right there, just further screen the equipment, but it could be added if necessary.
I would not want to see a stip from this board saying we must put that in. I think that's something that's appropriate for the applicant to be doing. We're showing it as a possibility, not a commitment. And I don't know why you would mandate that we do that if this screening is adequate, which we're confident it will be. And if we have to, we'll move this. Actually, yeah, you'll just see steps. And the neighbors who are right next door have already approved it. So,
Go around the horn, start with Barb.
I'm good.
Good, Bill?
No questions.
Yeah? No? Okay. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to be heard on this application?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll close the hearing and go into deliberations and have a conversation about this. Woody, you're good? Okay. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Woody, is this something else? Is this other business? Okay. Thought I was losing it. Okay. We'll start deliberations with application 21-2021. Is it 21 or 18? Woody, you're killing me.
Number different.
Your cover sheet's different. Yeah, stop those 2 martini lunches. That's
Right on
fine.
the agenda.
It is right on the agenda, I just need to read more carefully. So it's calendar number 18-2021, okay. Troy application. So, you know, we've looked at these before, and we've been pretty consistent in this, in that, you know, it is, snow, ice, you know, accumulation. You know, Woody, I would include the standard stipulations of not to be enclosed, and things of that nature. I can't remember what else we put on there, but not to be enclosed, I know it was a big one.
Expand it up and over.
Yeah, not to be built on top of or anything like that. With that, I would make a motion to, unless Kevin, you want to fill out the record a little more.
No, I think there's ample on the record about, beyond just our general acceptance of safety issues with this kind of structure, specific and detailed safety issues that have been experienced by the homeowner. So I think this clearly meets criteria to grant a variance.
Yep, I think the other nice part is that he reduced it. Woody, was that in working with you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Good, all right.
Minimum adjustment, I like it.
So I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Barb, second. All in favor? Unanimous, Woody. Okay, calendar number 5, 2022. You had 5 applications?
That's all so far. I got none today for next week.
I'll let you start,
Why not start?
because you're good at this.
So I would say a couple things. One is, if you want to look at it purely from the hardship analysis, I do think that there is sufficient evidence that this property is unique to the area based on its shape and based on the lack of buildable area. I think that has, next step number 2, created a hardship because the property you could build in the buildable area is nothing that's actually livable. So I think there is something unique and there is a hardship. Next question is what's being requested the minimum adjustment necessary? I think for the equipment pad, it is. There's evidence that the size being 3-foot extra space for people to walk in between and being a minimum amount of equipment that's necessary. The only thing that then gives me pause is whether the proposed construction in the front of the house is the minimum adjustment necessary. And I think my analysis is that it's probably not. That I'm not sure why that is actually required for the homeowner to have substantial justice in the use of their property. So then the next step, we in my estimation, we either vote no on that portion of it, or we make an assessment that despite it not being the minimum adjustment necessary, we are seeing a reduction in the nonconformity. And so therefore that would give us the ability to approve this anyway. The adjustment, the reduction in nonconformity is 8 cubic feet. There's no real case law that says exactly how much of a reduction is sufficient to grant this. Now, something that's purely negligible is probably not a good enough reason to allow for a variance to be granted. This is 8 cubic feet. I can be swayed one way or the other based on the thoughts of my fellow board people.
That's exactly why I wanted him to go first. Anyone have anything to add to?
Nothing to add from my side,
Bill?
Well, so then it's a question I'll ask my fellow colleagues. is-
I like it, so I don't mind. I like that he's reduced, I like that it's improving safety, I like the equipment that's going up. There are more pluses to this than negatives for me, so I'm willing to overlook the 8 cubic feet. I mean, I agree with you. Did the porch need to be that big? We could go back and have them reduce the coverage of the ceiling. But I like that in general, they're coming more into compliance with everything they've proposed. I like it, it's smart.
Right, it's safer.
Yep.
No doubt. But you don't necessarily have to approve the application as a holistic
Right.
thing. You know, we could carve things out, but as a general matter, do the rest of you think an 8-foot cubic reduction is something that's an importance of enough for the town and the character of the town to warrant then the approval of the project as a whole? Take into account also we're getting the HVAC rules.
Yeah, absolutely. And also the aesthetic we haven't talked about, because there is that aspect as well to think about, you know, from town's point of view. Hardship is there, reduction of non-conformity is there. You know, the peculiar size of the plot, that is there. So I think, you know, from a holistic point of view, we can create, you know, we can absorb that variance.
I like that the neighbors support it also, I
Yeah.
like the hedging. I just don't see a lot of downside to it.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I also agree with your assessment, though. That's why I sort of, went back to the applicant and sort of, give me a reason other than it looks pretty. Because that's not, so.
But
Part of our job is not to make things look pretty,
I
right?
agree.
That's architectural review board and that's, other boards in town. And so that's, when we get those type of explanations, that's why it's so difficult. We want to tell the applicant, look, no, we need something more. So, but I think we got that here. I think you could make the argument, and we actually did make the argument, not this collection of board members, but we did make this argument. What house was that, Woody? they had the door that opened inward into another door.
It's on Hollow Tree Ridge
Yeah,
Road.
that's right, yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Like, your door opens into another door and blocks a line of traffic. And Post 53 does a great job, but it's still a group of kids who are, trying their best, so.
And I guess just from a more theoretical construct, right? If part of the mission of this board is to encourage people to reduce nonconformance, to do that, you're gonna have to incentivize people to do that. And so maybe that means on occasion, someone gets something that's purely aesthetic, purely architectural, to create an environment where people are encouraged to reduce nonconformance, because if we don't allow them to do things like this, then they say, what's the point of even reducing the nonconformance? So there is some public policy value to it, and I guess the mission of this board is to take all those things combined together and try to balance that with the public policy of what we're trying to accomplish. And I guess while I do have a little discomfort about the purely architectural and aesthetic reason behind this, it is still fairly minimal in the context of the size of the plot and what's going on here and the impact it has on the rest of the neighborhood. So I guess you guys have convinced me.
Okay. And do we need, does anyone think we need, I don't think we need to stick to additional screening. I think the screening that's there is more than sufficient. Or is there anything else, Woody, that you thought we might?
Lighting is the only other thing I could think of.
Although I would say, if it was so clear that the screening there was sufficient and that the applicant's advisors were so confident that you wouldn't need any additional screening, curious why on the drawings there was
It shows additional
some
screening.
push just in case, but I don't feel strongly.
They go in front of planning and zoning on this anyway, as we discussed. So, if planning and zoning thinks that they need additional screening for the neighbors, right? Because all that's.
They probably won't do that.
They probably won't.
No, because they'll just be looking at flood damage prevention factors and the engineering of it, so. Screening of the equipment with the variance would be.
I mean, there's a big screening wall there already, so.
But at that point, on the equipment, since there is a change in equipment, is there a change in the decibel level of the sound coming out of the equipment?
It's probably
Probably in
lower.
that spot.
Yeah.
He said it's the same equipment.
Newer stuff
It's
is-
the same, they're just relocating the
Oh.
existing equipment and giving it more room to breathe. So I'm guessing it's the same decibel.
I don't see a need to stipulate to that. I'm gonna make a motion to approve the application as submitted. I don't think we need to step to the additional screening. I think it's a pretty close community down there. They can figure it out if they need to plant more bushes. Do I have a second? Dan, all in favor? Unanimous. All righty. We are on to other business, Woody. What do you have for me?
Well, we have, not the March minutes, we have a problem getting those out here. But the April 20 minutes, we have those. That was with Mike and Kevin and Matt, among others.
Thank you.
Mike?
It looks fine to me, I make a motion to approve.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I was not part of that one.
No, the three of us that were done enough to carry.
Yeah. We have another extension, these keep popping up, we're having trouble getting contractors and getting
Yeah.
this project started.
It's miserable.
This was approved when?
Let's see. Public hearing was in November.
And this is our first request?
Yes.
Just give me 6 months. We're asking for 2 to 3, then I just give them 6, and I'll keep coming back here.
Yeah, apparently they're getting close to forming a contract.
The world is so upside down, trying to do any projects.
You mind making a motion or somebody?
I will make a motion to approve an extension for 6 months.
I second that motion.
I'll support it.
Unanimous.
Election of officers.
Do we have regular members? Barb, you're an alternate, right?
I'm an alternate.
Bill, are you an alternate?
I'm here all the time.
Yeah.
No, Matt's
No,
a
you're not.
regular.
Greg is right.
Matt's not, Matt, you're not an
All
alternate.
night, I'm sorry.
Matt's a regular member.
And Dan, are you regular?
Yeah.
So we have 4. This is the most regular members we've had.
Well, didn't we last time have it, but then Jeff was like, I'm
Jeff
not
doesn't
ready.
want, Jeff's not ready.
Everybody was here. Jeff wanted to.
Jeff wanted to postpone, let's wait until Jeff's back.
I mean,
By
is
next
the
month, we're
plan
almost
to
at
elect
full.
him
The
chair?
plan is to elect
Okay, I
him
think he
chair
should
and
be
you
here.
vice chair. It would be my plan.
Do we need him to do that?
I think it'd probably be appropriate to have him here.
Oh, we're not gonna have a meeting next month, because we don't have an application.
So we don't even need a chair.
We don't need it until July.
Yeah, we'll get it sorted out for you, Woody.
Thank you.
I mean, are
Good
you
to
sure
have.
should just make that election?
It's fine with me,
you
but
okay with
is
it?
Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff's okay with it. He has fun being chair.
I mean, I would.
Keeps it entertaining.
Well, let me say it this way. 'cause we're-
Sat with him.
we're not-
Oh, yeah,
we're
he's
not-
entertaining.
The TV's no longer on.
There you go, TV's on. Oh, for sure it's on. Yeah.
Then I'll say it this way. I support Jeff. I also support, you remaining chairman. So if I could vote, then I would be voting for you to be the chairman.
Oh, yeah, Mike, are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to move on?
I was not stepping down from the board, but I was gonna step down as chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy. Yeah,
I'm okay. We love you as chair, but yeah, I'm okay with Jeff doing it.
You've done your duty.
You have. It's
You're
a big
not-
job.
You're not on the table. Then yes, I would vote for Jeff. if he wants it.
I don't
Maybe
know.
the three of you guys could make a motion and say, for a chair or vice chair.
Let me talk to Jeff. I mean, I don't mind chairing, but it's.
Okay. So how long have you been chairman now?
I don't know what it
Years at least.
You've been chairman?
5?
Yes.
No, I think it's more like 5 or 6.
Yeah, you deserve a break if you want it.
Well, but Jeff's been chair for like 30 years.
You've been here for 29 years or something. Maybe not.
And he's
that
been
long.
chair for,
No, he hasn't been chair at all.
he hasn't.
No.
Who was the longest running chair? Maybe I should go for that distinction.
Yeah. I could go for the longest running alternate.
Let's push that,
served on
Woody.
more
We'll
of
talk
these
to Jeff one
hearings.
more time about it.
Okay. What's with that, Barb?
I don't know.
Possible policy, historic oh, well, Barb, do you want to talk about historic preservation?
I have nothing else to add. I mean, we've, the
Where did we end up on that?
That's a great question. ARB has got to put something concrete in front of us. So I need to work with Liz, we need to get with you and just bullet point what the goals of that would be. Because we vacillated between having historical variance and giving people incentives. I love what Kevin said about the last application, giving people incentives to preserve these homes. So if you have a subcommittee that can kind of give you guidance and suggestions on how to preserve homes, we might not be tearing these things down. What do you need? What do we need as a board to evaluate it?
Well, I mean, the first thing is we need an assessment about whether state law allows it, right? Because I think it's a great idea for us to have flexibility if related to historic properties. So
We don't.
I know. So like if I'd be fine with one of either two things. One is if something is designated as a historic property by some legitimate entity, then we have the authority to grant a variance related to it. Or if we determine that something, despite not being officially designated by some body, determine that it has important and significant historical implications for the town because it's either so old or for some other
Specific architect
specific
or
reason,
design, right.
something, then we have the authority to grant a variance. And that would be easy to insert into the Darien zoning text regulations.
Okay.
But
We
the
can't do
principal
that.
question is it allowed by state law? And does state law allow for that? Because variances are allowed in certain limited areas, like safety or you're reducing nonconformance so we need some analysis about what state law allows.
Okay.
I think that was done.
Was it?
I'm checking my email. I think that was done by John Luizos.
Okay.
Woody, do you remember seeing anything on that?
No, I don't remember specifically.
It came up as an issue with this project, the grist mill. Actually, was that Wilder as well?
It was.
as to whether we could grant a variance based on historic
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
grounds or purposes or to preserve a historic structure. And the answer we got back was no. But there's no basis, that you've got to find the exact criteria you would for any other project to grant a variance.
Comes up with some regularity because we're such an old town. We have so many old buildings. And some of them want to add this or push out that, and sometimes they're in the setback.
So it sounds like it might be a effort to have zoning boards of appeals support a change to state legislation, like was being proposed for
wetlands.
basically everything, not just wetlands. Remember that proposal earlier this year?
Yeah.
Which was to grant us the authority to do it for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
Seemed like that was overbroad, and this would be a better.
Well, that maybe, but maybe in that overbroad, we get the ability to do historic.
Yeah, right.
Barb, do you know if there was anything specific written to suggest how to handle these projects? Like, that there could be an alternative grounds for granting a variance based on historic preservation qualities or something? Was there?
Yeah, so we looked at what
know, it
other
may not
towns,
be
pretty much,
legal.
we're one of the only towns that doesn't have a historic committee
Preservation.
to look at this. So we looked, there were, the criteria, I can't remember the details, I'll have to pull it up again. But specific architect, like we have some notable architects who've worked in this area, specific vintage of home. Trying to think what else.
Should you look at New Canaan's regulations? Because New Canaan's got all that,
Yeah.
Philip Johnson and
Yeah.
I did a
We
bit of
looked
work
at
on that.
Greenwich, I think we looked at Greenwich and Ridgefield.
But do those historic preservation regulations allow for additional volume and variances to be
Yes.
granted because of that?
They do.
Oh, do they? So then there
So
must be
I thought
some
that was
state
a kind of a
authorization.
compelling argument.
Yeah.
It was, you know,
Well-
it's one more thing we can use in our
Or what if you,
tool belt.
what if you did it through a zoning overlay zone, yeah?
Oh,
Rather than
Yeah,
requiring
yeah.
a variance,
Yeah, right.
just change the zoning
Yeah,
regulations
you
for a
certainly
historic
could, yeah.
property.
Mhm.
Well,
Right, isn't
thing.
that a much more intelligent way to handle
does
it?
it have to be by address though? Isn't an overlay a specific region of the town?
Yeah.
It's a type in nature, but you could apply it to historic
Okay,
properties.
the
So you
property.
could create a historic residence zone
Because one
and
thing,
then
that
change all the setbacks.
it isn't necessarily a good thing to have a home protected historically. When somebody's buying a home, that's a limitation, it isn't necessarily a good thing. So I think our town has avoided historically historic districts for that reason. We want to keep it flexible. So if an overlay gives you more options, not less, I love that.
Yeah, it gives you the flexibility of changing the zoning
Yes.
regulations for that particular
Purpose, okay.
site.
I would, is Louisa's the council, town council, or?
Not now, but we
Well,
could,
I think the question should be asked either to him, because he said it wasn't allowable. Why is it then that it's allowed in these other towns? What is different about their code and statute and state construct that allows them to do it?
Okay?
maybe that kind of ties into number 6, which was possible meeting with town council regarding some things. We talked about.
Yeah, I'm happy to-
Gary was big on, let's have a yearly update on case law and some other
Yeah,
stuff.
maybe if we're now pushing meetings to 7:30, maybe we do that at 7 or 6:45 on one of those days.
Let's see if we can do that next meeting. We'll just try to set up an early session with Wayne Fox, it would probably be. Okay?
All right,
Yeah, we should try to move it along.
I like it.
It's going to keep coming back to us with projects, and they're piecemeal. They're not in the, we can't say all of Prospect Avenue should be a special overlay zone, but a few of the homes, probably yes. And
Absolutely.
likewise, you got scattered. There is one thing I'll mention, in the regulations, there's a thing called Protected Town Landmark. And the commission designated 4 or 5 properties, not many, that they considered special homes, like the one next to the Congregational Church on Brookside Road, which is, I guess, very old. There's even a few trees, like the tree there. It's a big oak tree. So maybe that's a start, I don't know. But
Yeah, I think you run the risk with preservation, though, of what you said, which is people are reluctant to buy those homes that are labeled, plaqued, whatever, because you can't just do what you want with your house.
if you can't
We actually
paint
went
it-
through with a client's property and limited, what you could do with it, and it hasn't sold yet, but it was anticipated in doing it that it would be a steep reduction in the value of the house,
Yeah,
so.
okay.
Interesting stuff,
That's
okay.
great, thanks.
How
Thanks
about
for-
number 7? Can we talk about that for a minute? This came up again tonight. And I know Jeff was a bit anxious when this hearing was being set up. He was like, why do we have to keep looking at porches? If we're going to allow 5 foot deep and 8 foot wide, why don't we just allow them all across the board? And the answer is, well, sometimes they're in the setback space, and the regulation doesn't have the allowance. Would you like to pass along to the commission some suggested regulation change to allow these, when they come up, simple porches, regardless of where they fall?
I don't know, I think it's still our job to look at them, unfortunately. Whether we've got a policy that 5x8's good and safe, I think we still need to look at applications.
Because there is an allowance now that the commission set up, no more than 5 feet wide, can extend 3 feet into the setback space. But usually people want something bigger, like 5 by 8.
And I guess, I suspect if,
So the commission could change
if
something.
planning and zoning approve 5x8, we'd have people coming to us for 5x11.
Right,
Maybe,
right, I think you start to move the bar and it just keeps going.
maybe.
So do you know when that 5x3 was established?
In the last 10 years,
Okay,
maybe
so
7 or 8.
Planning and zoning has looked at this and decided 5x3 was sufficient, and we've now said, we think it's 5x8. Now it's kind of weird for us to go to them and say,
There were
make it
4 or 5
5x8.
things that we passed along. Would you consider an exemption for equipment? And they did. They didn't quite go all the way.
Right.
So this
Okay.
was one of those compromises. So you're not into, okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Nice
Great.
meeting, good
Nay.
job.
Great.